Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? It's your boy Isaac,
And this is your boy Bryce.
and we are Brothers on Tennis. And folks, we've got a special one for you. We are going to be talking with just a legend of the sport, someone that has made so many great strides in the sport of tennis, and just looking forward to just having a wonderful chat with him. Bryce, I know that you and I have talked about getting this interview scheduled, and I'm just so very very happy that it is finally coming forth. So I'll pass it over to you to do a little bit of an intro for the listeners.
Well, we have no other than the Haitian Sensation with us today. Ronald Agenor, and I was telling Isaac this before we got on this call here. You know, I enjoy interviewing the current players. They're cool and that's fun and all that kind of good stuff. But when I get an opportunity to interview someone who I watched during my formative years as a tennis player, particularly since there were such few players of color at the time that I was coming up playing the game, this guy I absolutely remembered and enjoyed watching play. Once again, we have Ronald Agenor with us today, top 25 singles player on the ATP Tour. He snagged three ATP Tour singles titles. Had a really lengthy career, 19 years. And although players nowadays are playing a little longer, back then, he was a bit of him and Jimmy Connors. They were kind of the ones that had a little bit of a longer career than most. This guy made it to the quarters of Roland Garros, losing to the eventual champion Michael Chang. Um, you know, Something we're going to talk about a little bit later, which is very historic for the sport, is the fact that Ronald Agenor was one half of the first final between two men of color, him and Yannick Noah. So we're definitely going to talk to him about that. Ronald has had victories over people like Agassi and Connors and Anacone, Forget, Pat Cash, Henri Leconte, and Bruguera. And we are so excited to talk to him today because he is truly a legend of the sport. And with that, we welcome Ronald Agenor to Brothers on Tennis.
Thank you for very much for having me tonight. It's a great honor. I heard a lot of great things about what you guys are doing, and I'm so happy to be part of this interview, and hopefully we can get to talk a little bit more about my career, but a little bit what's going on in the game today.
Absolutely. And Ronald, it is absolutely our pleasure. I mean, again, we do this because of folks like you, because
Yeah.
you laid the groundwork to be able to, really, really, we won't say allow, but you led the way of people of color being able to really come into the sport of tennis and really be able to take it to where it's at today. So we thank you first and foremost for not only playing but for everything that you've done in the
Hmm.
sport. So, and with that being said, just want to start off with a little bit of the background. So for folks
Sure.
that don't know you, talk to us about growing up and how you even got into tennis and what your, formative years were like with this sport.
It's very unusual, but I'm basically a Haitian family, and I got to give a little bit of my background because sometimes people they say, "Well, you don't look Haitian." So, what is the definition of a Haitian, or what is the definition of a human being? So, we all have different roots, different shades of color, but at the end of the day, I'm from Haiti. My dad was a Haitian and grew up in Haiti and met my mom. That is, um, her grandparents were from Lebanon. This is a whole group of people that came in the 30s in Haiti. But she was born in Haiti, and they got married and they got six children. Um, I am the only one who was not born in Haiti. However, I was born in Africa, so I'm the youngest one of six children. and my dad was my dad did a lot of studies, and he ended up being a diplomat at the United Nations, and I ended up being born in Morocco, where I spent about 10 years. And I was not playing tennis back then. And then my dad continued his career for the United Nations, and we moved to Congo. And while we moved to Congo, so I have three brothers and two sisters, I discovered the game of tennis at 10 years old in Congo. So for 4 years, I played a lot of tennis, but it was always fun, casual. And the first time I went to Haiti, I was 12 years old. So I went to visit family and stuff like that. And my three older brothers were studying in France. They went to college in France. And one time, one of my brothers, Lionel, came to Congo and he saw me play. He said, "This, my brother got a little talent." So he said, he asked my dad, "Can Ronald come and finish his high school in France?" Because all my brothers and sisters, they were they were in Bordeaux, France, going to college. And my dad said, "Why not?" There you
Wow.
go. And now I find myself in France with my three brothers and two sisters, and thanks to them, I I got that family environment. So I was still, even though I was not with my parents, so I was still connected, and they took care of me. And my brother Lionel was my coach, ended up being my coach for 7 years, and got me from no ranking at 14 years old and to a top 50 ranking about 7 years later. So
Wow.
that's the story. As for my connection with Haiti, at 18 years old, I ended up being the number 8 junior in the world. And by the way, this is the first time I made my first uh, contact with Atherash, because I played the Orange Bowl in Miami in 1982. I got to the semifinals. And I got a phone call from Atherash, and he asked me, "Ronald, you're a hell of a talent. Would like for you to join my management company, which was based in Washington D.C. And but my dad said, You're going to college first." And so I was torn between, the decision was between Arthur Ashe offered to join his management company in DC that he was sharing with Donald Dell, and going to University of Miami, where I got a full scholarship. So I went to college, but but my college experience didn't last more than a day. Because I'm traveling to Miami, and fresh of being number 8 junior in the world, so I'm like super excited to be playing college tennis and stuff like that. And there was no, I didn't, I didn't get anybody to really welcome me or explaining me what was going on. And I was told by the administration that I would have to sit for like a few months and get all my, the tests that you have in America for college and stuff like that. And at that point, I say, so when am I gonna? So my main concern was not. I said, when am I gonna start playing? And they said, well, if everything goes well, maybe in 6 months or 3 months or for the next season. And I'm like, what am I doing here? So I,
Right.
so I,
Right.
yeah, true story. So I called my dad. I said, Dad, what am I doing here? I can't, because of me going to college in France and they need this. I said, why didn't you tell me all this before I even flew in, right? So 2 days later, I was back on a flight in France, and we had a meeting with my dad, and I said, Dad, can I just turn pro? Atherash is asking me to come in his management company, and the only thing I heard from my dad, that's fine, as long as you get to the top 15.
Mm.
So that was the deal with my dad, and I was happy that he didn't, say, well, you gotta go to college, because you might everybody went to college, got their degrees and different things, and are very successful. But I was super happy. So I didn't have any. But Also, he wanted me to continue play for Haiti. That was very important to him.
Okay.
And you know what's interesting is I read that Arthur Ashe was one of your early heroes. He and Bjorn Borg.
Yes.
So tell me, what was that experience like when you got that phone call from Arthur Ashe?
It
One of
was it
your
was
people, your
so
heroes.
yeah. I mean, Arthur Ashe. When I was in Congo, I was watching him win Wimbledon. I was like, oh my God, I just want to be like him. I was, and I loved the way he was playing tennis. It was straightforward tennis, just like, as a matter of fact, still the best tennis today, still the tennis that they played back in the 70s. Those players had unbelievable technique. People we'll talk about hopefully later about what's going on in the game today, but I was so impressed with what I was seeing and the agility that he had, and he made tennis look like so easy,
Right.
effortless. There's some other players that did the same, but Arthur Ashe stood out, and he was the only man of color, getting to number one in the world and winning Wimbledon. It was just wow, he did it. As so for me, all the way in Congo, and I was in the south of back then it's called Zaire. Okay,
Hmm.
and so I was in Lubumbashi, and sometimes you would not get good TV reception, right? But I was able to watch Arthur Ashe win Wimbledon, and I was really so happy. My dad said, "Hey, maybe you should pick up this game," and and so I got really happy to see another man of color being number one in the world. That was a big moment for me. But at the same time, um, so Arthur Ashe inspired me to pick a tennis racket. That's very important to know. So models do make a difference. And
Absolutely.
oh yeah, and then when I got to France, I was able to watch more tennis, of course, on TV. And when I started watching Borg playing, and what I love about Borg was his ability to stay calm and composed, and it was a different style than Arthur Ashe, but both of them to me were the best ever in different styles for everything they were, their personalities, the way they were playing the game, and they became my role models, both of them. You see, and I found this very it was very important. Every player, I mean, in every different part of life or sports or whatever you're doing in life, you always have some kind of inspiration, and I'm happy that I was able to get uh, to have Arthur Ashe, showing me the way, and Borg showing me something different, and both of them brought the best out of me.
Absolutely. I mean, Ronald, you talk about, your, folks that you looked up to and Arthur Ashe and I can only imagine what it must have been like as, a teenager, 12, 14 years old, leaving Haiti and going to France to be cared for your three brothers and your two sisters. I mean, talk to us about that how that came about and what was that like living away from your parents, but living with your siblings and them taking care of you and focusing on tennis.
It was very very important. However, um, remember I was not born in Haiti. So
Right.
I discovered Haiti at the age of 12 for a family visit, right? But my life was in Africa for 14 years and then turned out to be 20 years in France. So what happened is because of me, traveling around, experiencing the African culture, North Africa, Congo, which was ex-Zaire, and I grew up in such a, how do you call it, free spirit. Everything, Mother Nature is beautiful. Life is great. I was going to a French school. Both places, Morocco and Congo, are former French colonies, just like Haiti. And so for me, this is almost the same culture going over. You see, Haiti, they speak French. former French colony,
Right.
Congo, Morocco, then you're back in France. So it's a normal channel. So I always felt at home because of the language.
That makes sense.
You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
then when at 14 years old from Congo, when I went to Bordeaux, it was just a continuation of my journey because French was my main language.
Hmm.
And in our family we speak Creole and French, the other two languages that we've been speaking the most. And my brother Lionel really pushed the issue and became my coach for 7 years. And I was going to regular school, going to school at 8 o'clock in the morning and done at 5. So it's completely different than in America. You are not going out of school. Here they go out of school like at 2:30, so they have the rest of the day. School was until 5 o'clock in the evening. So sometimes we would practice with my brother at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
We would
Now,
go
what?
we would go and practice between 12 and 2. He would come and pick me
Mhm.
up at school. We go on the courts at the university and of Bordeaux. And then sometimes I would play tournaments. I started to play a lot of tournaments after school. So I had a life. Uh, I really started competing like at 14, 15 because between 10 and 14 years old, I played
Mm.
one tournament that I won.
That's right. There you go.
And so I beat everybody I think it was in 1976. I still have the pictures. And because what happened is that you had tennis, as you know, was the elite. It was a rich sport for the rich people. And just imagine all the way down in Lubumbashi, which is way south in Congo. And I had to play. I was probably the only black brown skin player over there, and everybody was white because the clubs where the tournaments were, um, these were the kids that were from families that had their own. Because these are, all those people were from Belgium, France, and there were um, engineers, and there were, that part of Congo is probably the richest, one of the richest in the world. You got diamonds, copper, you got all kind of minerals, and all those because Congo is a former colony, so all those people were there, to continue develop the economy in whatever they were doing over there. So these were country clubs that were only for the elite, non-Congolese people. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Hmm.
So I was so I was happy to to have won my first tournament there in 1976.
So you have some success as a junior, and then
Yes.
you end up becoming a pro. And Ronald, I'm just going to tell you this: there were three things that I remember about you as a player when I was watching you as I was a kid.
Hmm.
Number one were the smooth ground strokes, particularly the backhand.
Hmm.
I always liked your backhand.
Hmm.
Number two, although, and I don't know if they were characterizing you back then as a baseliner, I always knew that you knew how to handle your business at the net. You were not one of these kind of guys that got a short ball and then retreated back to the baseline. You definitely could take care of business at the net. But the thing that I probably remember the most was the hair.
Yeah. Now I gotta tell you this. I had a lot of hair, that's for sure. And I remember Brad Gilbert made a funny comment in a newspaper about my hair. But at the end of the day, the there's a lot of stupid people out there, and social media has allowed a bunch of stupid people make stupid comments. You
Mm-hmm.
see, and when you get a chance, watch my match against Yannick Noah We played about 4 times. I lost 3 times against Yannick, good friend of mine. And the match that is on YouTube that we played in Bordeaux in I believe that's 1988 or 1989. I won that match in 3 sets. You would, I don't even me when sometimes I get the chance to watch it a little bit, the highlights. We're playing like tennis in the 70s, which is serve and volley, return volley. I mean, the points were very short. It was like playing back in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So I think some people are, you live in America, and sometimes people make comments just to say stupid things, right? They
Right.
just they just limit yourself, and there's a reason why I didn't go to top 5 in the world or top 10. There's a few reasons, but people have preconceived notions. They have very close-minded, and in this tennis world, sometimes they try to corner certain people in a certain way of thinking and a certain way of playing. So to describe my game, I was an attacking player. An attacking player doesn't mean that you serve and volley day and night, right?
Right.
So there's a difference in that, and you just know where you stand, where your shots are, where how you play the game. And I always say when I train players, remember one most important thing: there is more than one way to play the game. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And with that philosophy, and I remember when I was training Bordeaux and you know, at my club in France, they were saying, "Oh, they were telling my brother, oh my God, your brother is missing so many balls. They're going out in France." I said, "Oh." So my brother goes, very cool. My brother was a very low key. He goes, "Oh, look, I agree with you. The balls are flying out everywhere, but guess what? We're train. That's what training is about. You training, keep the ball in." Because I was using a lot of power. I was using what you call like max. What you see today, it's a lot of power,
Hmm.
Right.
but this power is mostly generated from the rackets. It's not a better technique. So I always say, and my brother told the guy, say, you know what? When those balls gonna go in, he'll be the best players in the world. And that's exactly what happened.
Absolutely. And Ronald, I mean, you spoke about, the matches that you played with Yannick Noah. You played
Mm-hmm.
for, of course, again, talking, you mentioned some stupid comments. So I'm very interested in hearing your perspective, or kind of what happened when you and Yannick played the final at the event. I guess it was a Basel, Switzerland, back in 1987. I believe that was the first time that two men of color had
It
met
was
in a final.
incredible moment of history that I understood. Actually, I understood this moment more than Yannick. He understood this moment more today. But when he was a player, he didn't understand the magnitude of what we have done that particular day. Of course, Noah is a superstar. Won the French Open in 1983. This year's going to mark his 40 years. And what have happened there was an amazing, thing because you are in Europe, two black players. Now, sometimes I start reading, say, well, they say Agenor is not black, he's brown.
Oh gosh.
So,
Ridiculous.
so, so it came from somebody in America, and I'm like, what is this guy's problem? What defines a black man or a brown man? Right? There's no difference.
Right.
That's
There's no
right.
difference. There's no difference. We and the reason why I always kept my head on my shoulders because I grew up in Africa.
Hmm.
I grew up in Africa. I could say I'm an African, right? So
Hmm.
the thing is, in Europe, they didn't give a crap about this time in history because they don't think it's important. The newspapers the next day, nobody even mentioned, oh, these are two players of color. This is Yannick and Ronald.
Mm.
Nobody mentioned that these are two players of color. Why? Because it didn't click. In America, like, dang, you got two players of color making a first final of the first in the history
Hmm.
because very few people know or very few people knew back then, and probably very few people know today. And this is history because this is what is happening in America with all this, what's going on today and in the world. And I'm so grateful that I lived 14 years in Africa. I learned so much, and in Europe for 20 years, and I've been here in America since 1998. So I have a worldwide, understanding of the world, of humans in general, different cultures, different language. At some point, I was fluent in Swahili, speak a little bit of Arabic.
Mm.
I learned German. I learned Italian. So, so this is something that have helped me understand. But it's not until, sorry, that I got to live in America that I start to understand the importance of this game.
Hmm.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Because I understood it because I played for Haiti. I kept my Haitian citizenship because of my dad, right? I didn't play for France. So I kept kind of like my culture inside me from the heritage of my roots. These are my roots, right? So
Right.
so so I kept being representing Haiti all around the world, which is a black country, the first black country to be independent.
And so, Ronald, let me ask you this.
Mhm.
So, with that being said, what was your experience like on the tour? Because, like, for example, we've spoken to Zena Garrison, and she would mention that she felt like she got treated better outside of the United States than she did when she played in her own country. What was your experience like on the tour as a man of color? Um,
Here's the thing: the culture, the black culturalism in America, is completely different than the black culture in Europe or in Africa or in the Caribbean. And until you experience all these different cultures, it's not easy to understand, right?
mhm.
But but it's not until I got to live in America all these years. My wife is African American. She's from Atlanta, Georgia, and I learned I learned so much about what America is about. I learned how black people have suffered here. While living in France, my life, even as a brown or black man, was different than here.
How
The
so?
Because the history, if you take a like uh, Mr. Washington, who passed away a few years ago, so he was telling me all these stories that he has to go through, and I didn't experience that as a brown slash black man in Europe, right? So until you live in America to see what life is about here, you're not going to understand. You can read books, so or watch movies. Now we have YouTube. We can learn about history, but it was pretty bad.
Hmm.
So when you can't go to the tennis club because you're black, it's only for white people. That's painful.
Hmm.
So me living in France, I never experienced that because they didn't have that. And when you know your history, you better understand the present and you can prepare for the future. So Xena, so when I was watching all the players, those all the African American players, I was trying to understand what was going on because there was a lot. You could tell there's a lot of. They were playing two matches, one on the court, or maybe three, and one with the system.
Hmm.
You see, because this sport here was not for black people,
Hmm.
and I believe the race issue and all these problems that you that have been going on even worse past years in America has prevented a lot of black people to pick tennis as a sport, especially the men. There's a reason why you have more female black players than male black players. So it has been very difficult for black players in America to succeed. Worse today than back 30 years ago. How is that possible?
And why would you? And what's your perspective on why we do have more black women players than men?
I personally think, first of all, in general, whatever color you are, girls are more dedicated than most men when it comes to certain things. Um, you have a situation where, let's take the example of the USTA, right? Remember, when you live in France, you're French. Whatever background you have, you're French, right?
Hmm.
When you have a French passport, you're French. But racism does exist. And between and you guys, racism exists in every freaking country on the planet. I don't know one country that doesn't have racism. It's different, has different levels, right? But it exists every country in the world. The only problem that you have in America is black people is the only race that came here by force.
Right.
So therefore, they were not invited, right? They didn't
Right.
come, hey, let me go to America. I'm going to see if I can get a better life. No. So they came here by force. So it's difficult to compare uh, what's going on with blacks and all these cultures that you have, which makes America great. But if you come to America and you just stay in your culture, then it's not America anymore.
Right.
So when you have the USDA that have to manage, um, it's like a company. Uh, Freedom is a big word, but it does exist. America, there's justice. There's a lot of things that are amazing that you don't find in other countries. However, um, if you take the example of the USDA, when they have to give wild cards to a player, do they go by race or level? Right? Because you come to a system that you don't have in other countries, even though you have like different cultures. So when you are at the USDA and you have to give the wild cards at the US Open, right? And do you give to a Latin player, an Asian player, a black player, or a European American player, or a born and raised American? So the problem has been very complicated because you only get better when you have a good coach. And who pays for the coach? If you don't have the money to pay for a coach, how are you going to get better?
Right.
Right. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole problem of tennis in America is access to knowledge. Knowledge is money. Knowledge is gold. But if you don't have access to that knowledge, how do you go further? I don't know if you notice, if you look at the history books, Sloane Stevens is probably the first ever black tennis player that was developed in an academy. Check the books, check the records, check facts.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
These are
Mm-hmm.
facts. These are facts. Training with, okay, she stayed there until I guess until she was 14, 15, 16, whatever it is. But no academies in America has produced any black player. None. Zero. Zero.
Oh.
Most African American players were mated with their families.
Mm-hmm. Local programs, community programs.
At the end of the day, is their families. The Williamson. Now, what happened is when you're so good, then the UST will take care of you. But however, it is not easy for the USTA to define who you give wildcards to when you have such a diverse culture and when you have to be fair to every culture. Am I right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is subject to a discussion, and it's not black and white because now what's strange is that you don't see any more Asian Americans at the top of the rankings anymore like they used to. Like with Michael Chang and all those guys that you had like a I think about 5 or 7 Asian American players. They were top players.
Mm-hmm.
You had so many black players 30 years ago. You even had a lot of African players. You had players from Senegal. You had players from Nigeria. You had players from
Yeah.
yeah. There's all
Odazor. Yes.
the Duke.
Yes, the Duke.
The Duke. You had the Duke. These are all good friends of mine. You had Tony Moe. He has his
Mm-hmm.
son playing on with the UST today. But look, thankfully, whatever is good or bad, because you never know if you have done things differently, if you have gone further up or further down. I am grateful that I had the path uh, that I had because I was kind of like, even though I experienced the racism that I experienced in my life as a growing up, later on in life, that was a different story, but it was mild. So I was able to focus. This is very important. People don't understand. Tennis is the most difficult sport on a mental standpoint. Now, I'm not talking about mountain climbing and stuff like that. This is like another planet for me. People that go up the rocks,
Mm-hmm.
mountains with no protection with just their hands. Like I'm not. This is not even sport. This is almost unreal to me. But just no. This is they're in another league. They just risk their lives and every time they go up. But tennis is a very difficult sport mentally because there's so many things that you have to manage. And if you're not prepared, you will fail. So
Right.
the USTA all the past 30 years, didn't have a program because too much politics was involved. Were involved, right? So they didn't have because if you favor the blacks, then you have the other culture to say, oh, you give all the walkouts to the blacks. If you give it to the Asians, then the Latin players. How many Latin American players you have succeeded?
Right.
How many? Not that many.
Not a lot.
I think there was one because it doesn't fit. So the tennis problem in America is also related to politics, unfortunately. So when black players are going out there, if they don't have right guidance, and if they're not able to focus on the game, and if they don't get the best coaches out there, they're not going to make it unless the parents are around and they're going to take over. They're going to manage coach. It's the way it is. This has nothing to do with talent. You have all these organizations around the country for black players. Now, how many are getting out of that program, of those programs? You got Tafoy. Tafoy came from Africa,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
So, and Tafoy, if he had got better coaching early in his career, he would have been like top 5 in the world already before. So, access to great coaching, to the best coaches in the world, is part of the deal.
So, in taking that perspective, Ronald,
Mhm.
what are you thinking about in regards to the state of the game as it is today? What are the gaps that you're seeing, and what are some of the things that you see as being a positive or a good thing for people of color?
For people of color, the great thing is they can see there's no limit. You see Serena winning all these Grand Slams. You see Naomi Osaka, that is Haitian. They had a great story. Um, one thing is for sure, this is not lack of talents. There's so many talents. But with the globalization, nobody comes to America anymore for the tennis. So when you go to tournaments in America, I'm not talking about the Grand Slams. All you see is American players playing against each other.
That is so true.
That is true. Yep. Sure
And
enough.
and what you call the minor league of tennis, like the futures, has become a playground for college players.
Mm.
So how do you make your way up? How do you make your if you're stuck in the futures at this level, you got no coach or you got no money, not enough money to pay for a coach. You have to pay for that. It costs a lot of money to travel in America. Pay for tournament, pay for hotel, rent a car. I mean, you need a huge budget. But the thing is, the USD has the money,
Right.
and their player development for. And I'm not talking because, with my background, I don't differentiate black, white, blue, green. I've seen everything. I've embraced every culture, every religion. But however, when it comes to the point that you see a certain culture is not able to move forward, like why? There are reasons, and the reasons are very obvious. But like I said, there's too much politics in tennis because it's matching what's going on in America and some other countries. Don't think it's just like an American thing. It's a world global. It's a global thing. But the the players like the Williams sisters, what they've done is absolutely phenomenal. And you got Sloane Stevens. He's the first African American that won a Grand Slam after the Williams. And then you have a lot of players. You have You have so many players out there, but they don't have, unfortunately, they have the talent, they have the ability, but they don't have the channel to produce. First of all, champions are never mass produced. However, you can have a series of players that can be produced over and over and over just because there's a path. You see what I
Hmm.
mean? So the problem is that there's a path for this one, there's a path for this one. The path is not the same for everybody. So, so to me, the game has changed dramatically, not just in America but around the world. You, they have created, those futures uh, that are they're bad. They're bad because some players they're staying like 5 years in the futures, playing all these
Mm.
minor league events, and they claim that they're professional. They're not. They don't have the level.
Hmm.
They don't have the level, but they go and spend thousands and thousands of dollars playing those stupid tournaments, which is just it should be a stepping stone. And you just play it for a year and then you're done.
Right.
You see, but you're gonna spend as much as money in those tournaments than any other tournament. Actually, you can spend more money. So money is an issue, but it's not just the main thing. You should have access to really good coaching anywhere you go, and that is not the case. So all those organizations that you have in America, most of them, what are they doing? What are they doing? Where are the players? So Tiafoe is the one player out of one program that got millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars.
Mm.
Do you see my point? So people are like, "Oh, great! Tiafoe got from this program in Maryland and all that stuff." Wait a minute, how many millions did y'all get to get one player?
Hmm.
That's true. And what do you think about? It seems like there's this trend, even from international players, about now coming in and playing collegiately.
Well, this is a very sensitive subject.
Okay.
So, but every subject that we're talking about, everything is sensitive, you know, because right now people they're gonna listen to the podcast and say, "Oh, yeah," they can start making conclusions about about anything, right? However, you got to tell the truth. The
Hmm.
truth is, you know what makes America great?
But
There's, there's no other country can match America for that. None. The education, the college system in America is the best in the world for athletes. There's no better. So, because you are able to, just think about it, you are able to do something that you love, which is sport, and get an education. And, and if you're getting a scholarship, like an athlete, most of the time, 99.9% of the time, athletes that are recruited from Europe to play tennis, they get a full scholarship, right?
right.
So, this is unbelievable. This is the best. This is what this is the best America has to offer. So I've been in tournaments of friends that are coaching, at this level, Division One, Division Two, and when you look at the players, I went to New Orleans a few years ago, and there's that team. So this coach is originally from Egypt, and I look at the players on the team. I'm like, damn, you don't have one American player there. Boys and girls are like, wow. So I, if and that's again that's my personal opinion. This has nothing to do with politics or you're from the right, the left, the middle. I don't care about that. Because
Hmm.
I came to a point that, to me, politics is bad.
Hmm.
It's bad. It's just people don't respect each other anymore. Done. So you have to find your way where you fit in. And because some people you would like to join them, but they're not welcoming you. So what are you going to do, right? So, but thankfully the world is a big place. So, and again, it's my personal opinion. They should maybe have 50% of college scholarship go to Americans.
Right.
Okay, that's my personal opinion because you're still
Hmm.
giving the opportunity to, because you can't. But when you have consistently 80, 90, or 100% of players, what is that telling you? What is the reason? So every college is going to give you a difference. Well, non-American players, they fight more for the team because they want it more. And in my head, I say, did you give them that option to fight for your team?
Hmm.
You don't know because I see how you a student gets college scholarship, and when they're getting this college, they get this is the joy. The joy is unbelievable.
Right.
So maybe if they were giving more chances to American players, and this has again nothing to do with color, it can be white, black, Asian, whatever it is. It's just, can you give maybe 50% to non-Americans and 50% to Americans? So that would be a fair balance. But I'm not. I've never been a college coach. Will never be. So I don't know the reasoning about all what's behind the choice of the coaches. You see what I mean?
Yep.
Right.
So I'm not gonna criticize for saying this because some of them they say, well, Americans don't fight. Foreigners fight more to be on the team. I don't know. I cannot tell you. I've never been in that field. You see, but from my perspective, I think it would be fair to give more chances to have a quota in colleges to give it more chances to Americans. Like you have you split in half and half, right?
Right. I saw on the tennis channel, and I
No, no.
forgot
But
who.
what do you think about it? What do you think about what you said?
Well, I saw on the tennis channel recently, and I can't remember who was saying it, that they were saying that international players have figured it out, that the United States has created this amazing training facility, training ground, the collegiate sports system, and they are taking full advantage of it. And it's
Right.
going exactly to what you're saying, because I believe, and I played, for Southern University,
Oh,
I believe the coaches are under pressure to win championships, right? Because there's all sorts of incentives to win. So if you're a coach and your incentive is to win, but your mind is not focused on whether your players have to be American or international, you know, you're gonna go for whoever you think is gonna get you
okay.
the ship and get
Okay.
you the money.
Got you. Got you. But here's the deal. Look at the 70s and 80s. I mean, look at the roster at UCLA.
Uh huh.
Look at the players. Look at the players. Stanford. All, this,
Yeah.
all those guys. I mean, those all. They went to college.
Mm-hmm.
The level was so amazing because there was not, and these these future tournaments around the world have killed the game in all aspects. And all those players that play college in America back in the 70s and 80s, they ended up being amazing players, top 10 players in the world. The only now you see players going to college and getting back in the game and playing big tennis.
Yeah.
So you had a gap of about 30 or 40 years, where it says you can't go to college and try to turn pro.
Right.
Not they're reverting it. You see, so but that's a very good uh, subject, and hopefully something can be done to allow maybe more American players to have some kind of priority over. I wouldn't say priority, but now if I'm a coach in college and then I got to make sure I win the title so my paycheck can stay the same the
Right.
next year, right?
Right.
Right.
Am I
Right.
going to go with a player from Europe that is going to die for me, or I'm going to play with an American that's going to be trouble, or that I'm going to try? But you don't know. You have to recruit. You have to know who you're recruiting,
Yeah.
and this is something the USD has been pretty bad at
Mhm.
recruiting talents. They have not been finding identifying the right talents. Okay,
And
now
then,
today, yeah,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
no, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you what would then be your thoughts on what they can do to improve that.
Now, I'm not taking a look at the coaches at the UST today, but a few years ago, I can see one player that got one coach that was up there. So what happened is the '80s, all those players like Agassi and Chang, Courier, all these players from the '80s and '90s, they had amazing coaching. I'm not just talking about the Academy of Bollettieri, but a lot of them, including Jimmy Connors, they were coached by former players that were top number one in the world or won Grand Slams. So they always got knowledge was transferred to another generation of players. Now, let me ask you this. When did it stop? For 20 years since Andy Roddick, you still don't have a male American player winning a Grand Slam. So what happened all those years?
The big
I,
three.
I was about to say, I'd say the big three.
Okay, for two reasons. For two, and you cannot downgrade the importance of coaching in America in
Yeah.
tennis. Okay, because every other sport, the coach is the man,
Right.
helping the players winning the title. Of course, it's way more difficult to coach a team of 15 people. It's just all those team sports that got you have to manage a lot of players at the same time, a lot of strategy, and their paycheck. All those basketball coaches, football coaches, it's an amazing paycheck. When you see the paycheck, the coaches in colleges in America, there's only a handful that make six figures. However, um, you're dealing with a situation here where you have former top players are not part of the player development system at the USTA. So Agassi doesn't coach. Sampras doesn't coach. Chang doesn't coach, except for Nishikori. Doesn't coach the USTA. Courier doesn't coach. Am I correct?
Yeah. No, you're
Hmm.
correct. Yeah.
Yep.
Todd Martin doesn't coach. You
Nope.
Former
know.
black players don't coach. Malivai doesn't coach.
No.
Correct.
Brian Shelton coached a team and then he coached his son. Rodney Harmon was at the UST before coaches college. So where are the former players helping the top players today? None. Very rare. Almost doesn't happen. Or if it happens, it's like in such a private setting you won't even know.
Right. Right.
So look at what's going on in Europe. Did you see the entourage of Djokovic?
Hmm.
Guys,
Yeah, even this.
he has
Yeah, he's got.
three former players in his team, and two won a Grand Slam.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So how do you expect? Of course, the player is the one winning, but if if a coach has any opponents, now look at Alcaraz, Ferrero, former number one.
Yep.
So I don't mean to diminish other coaches that have not been top players. It's not what my my what I'm trying to say here. Because some players they want to be the best coaches in the world. They read books, they train. Of course, you don't need to be a former top player to be a great coach, right?
Right.
However, the process can be faster because there's a lot of mistakes you won't make, right? Why do you think Alcaraz is already number one in the world in the team? Because he got so much knowledge with him all these past years. Because I'm telling you, tennis is not easy. It's easy if you get the right coach to help you move forward. So Americans right now have been doing they have a difficult path. Of course, they have like what 10 players in the top 100 today in
Hmm.
the men's side.
Mm-hmm.
But America got to be number one in everything they do.
Stay tuned for part two of the Ronald Agenor interview.